Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's nice to be with you again. As always, before we get into anything, I am going to ask you to hit that subscribe button down there below, please. Hitting subscribe does help me to grow my audience so much. It takes a few seconds. It's free to do so. You can also consider becoming a member of the channel by clicking on the join button. Anyway, that's the housekeeping out of the way. The eagle-eyed of you will notice that I have a wonderful guest joining me on this episode today, and I'd like to extend a very, very warm welcome to Merill Fernando from Microsoft. Many of you will be familiar with Merill on LinkedIn and Twitter, or X as we must now call it, for everything Microsoft Entra. And Merill, I'm going to hand over to you to let you say hi to the audience, introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff. So over to you, Merill.
Cool. Awesome. Hey, hi, folks. So I'm Merill Fernando. I'm a product manager in the Microsoft Entra team. My day job is helping some of our large enterprise customers deploy Microsoft Entra. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, so I work a lot with large enterprise Australian customers. But I also work closely on some of the sort of the API and the development and the graph side of the Entra house. That's sort of my passion area. So you'll see me talk a lot about graph and PowerShell and all of that. So that's me. I also run the sort of the weekly Entra.News, which is sort of a weekly newsletter where I bring together all of the latest news on what's happening with Microsoft Entra and sort of share all of the content with the folks. So because there's always a lot happening, and there's always a lot, not just from Microsoft, from the community, like yourself, Peter, sharing lots of videos and teaching people. So I like to bring all of that into like one day, a weekly newsletter. So you get the latest about what's happening this week in Entra. That's
Oh,
a little
wonderful.
bit about myself.
Oh, fantastic. Well, welcome, Meryl. It's lovely to talk to you. And the newsletter I absolutely love, and I'm always very, very honored when you include some of my content in it. But we'll put a link to your latest newsletter in this video so people can go check it out. And it's easy to find on your socials, isn't it? On LinkedIn, you publish it
Yes.
every week, and there's some great folks sharing content on Entra all the time. But I'd love to start, Meryl, with just recapping a little bit about the Entra story over 2023, because wow, what a year for Entra. And it all really began with a name change, which I think personally, it ruffled some feathers, but I think personally it was needed because what we must now call Microsoft Entra ID, which is kind of separate to Entra in and of itself,
Yes.
used to be Azure AD, which I was used to find very confusing. People used to say, well, what's the difference between Azure and Azure AD and on-premise is it? So I think it's massively helped things. So if you would just talk a little bit about the name change, how that's landed, and what you think the big sort of headlines of 2023 were from your perspective for Entra.
Yes, exactly. And just today, I was searching. Someone asked me something about password expiry, and I just typed password expiry, and all I had to do was just add the word Entra. Before, I
Mm,
would have had to type Azure AD and then get a mix of different Azure stuff, not really related to what I was looking for.
mm,
So, like, and just a reminder for myself, hey, like, it's a lot easier now because the Microsoft Docs team, the Entra team, went ahead and they renamed all the docs. So a lot of the Azure content itself no longer has Azure AD in it. They've all been, I think they did this work over 6 months, and last October, November, they completed all of that. So you find everything saying Entra now instead of Azure. But of course, all the references in the product, we didn't sort of spend the time going and renaming. So you'll still find code samples will still have Azure AD because that's just too much work for not much value.
mm,
But overall, initially, lots of people didn't want to let go of the Azure AD name. There were
mm,
lots of fans of the name who have come from Active Directory AD, and then just it felt natural to them that this would be Azure AD. The thing is, the reality is it also confused a lot of folks, especially people who
mm,
are new to Microsoft, and Microsoft is growing, and there are more customers coming in, especially from the security side of things. And a lot of stakeholders, when we speak to them, they go like, isn't Azure AD related to Azure? Like, it's why would I have it in my org when I'm not even using Azure? Maybe they are AWS users, or they're using Salesforce, and they're like, why would I use Azure with Salesforce? Like, that doesn't mix at all. So those were some of the reasoning behind that. And Azure AD was evolving. We have a more complete story now, right? We have things like our global SSC, the global secure access, Microsoft's SSE solution. We have our customer identity story with external ID, and we have things like verified ID. We have Entra permissions management. So we are evolving past the directory phase of things, but all of these services, they are tied very closely to identity and Entra and the sort of the directory as well. But they're sort of standalone products on their own. So if we didn't do this rename, we would be calling this Azure AD and everything else Entra, and then people would be even more confused. Like, why am I going and making conditional access changes for Azure AD conditional access, but it's affecting Entra SSE, right? Like, it'll be
Yeah.
not aligned at all. It just confuses everyone even further. So that was one of those reasons behind coming up with a uniform name and a brand and having everything under one umbrella. So change is always hard on folks who are used to things, and lots of people have refused to like adopt the new name.
Hmm.
I even had one of my counterparts on the Intune side. We have an ongoing bet. He said, "You're going to rename back to Azure AD," like we did with the Intune. With remember, Intune was Mem, and then it went back
Yes.
to being Intune. So we have a running bet, and each day he seems to be on the losing side now of, of that particular
Mm.
bet.
Yeah, I think Entra is here to stay. I like the name. I really do. I think it works. I think it's given it, ironically, no pun intended here, I think it's given it a clear identity, which is what it's all
Yes,
about, isn't it? So, and I think it was confusing before. For those of us who weren't deeply ingrained in the technologies and could understand how it differed from on-premises AD to Azure AD to what I would call what I used to call pure Azure, which I can now just call Azure because
yes,
it's way less confusing. But I take the point you make that Intune, of course, it became MEM or Endpoint Manager, then it went back again, and um,
yes.
Microsoft do love a rename of a product. But I think over the last couple of years, from what I've seen, I think those sort of rebranding and is starting to make sense, and I think will probably stick. Would be my gut feeling, and I think it's all for the best. So.
Yes, yeah. Like, I like the name. I started Entra.News as well
Yeah.
when we did the rename, and it's sort of newer, right? Like, if I said Azure
Mm,
AD News, it's not like people would be that keen or interested in it. But there's also this interest, and the momentum has been building up, and
mm,
like from ever since we launched, and uh, the Entra branding, especially Entra ID and all of the other services.
mm,
It's there's a lot of momentum building, and people are seeing that value in
mm,
using Azure, in using Entra ID
mm,
as a directory service. And we have lots of customers who have multiple systems
mm,
running, and now in this day and age where everyone is trying very aware of the cost, the zero interest rate period is over, and people are more conscious about what they do, and almost everyone has Entra ID and Entra as part of their services, and a lot are looking to consolidate. So there
mm.
is that momentum as well with a lot of, like, I speak a lot with folks who reach out to me on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I keep hearing sort of the similar thing
Hmm.
from them.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's becoming easier for organizations to choose Entra as their identity platform of choice. So when you look back to its growth over the years as Azure AD, there's a lot more in the Entra admin center now than there used to be. When you think of things like entitlement management and PIM and access reviews, it's each year we've got more and more content, and I guess it's an easier decision for many big organizations to now move away from third-party products like your Oktas or whatever else, and say, actually, we can tell the whole story with Microsoft. I'm certainly seeing a lot of my customers coming to us and saying, well, how can we consolidate and get more value from our Entra ID P1 or P2 subscriptions and bring everything into one house.
Exactly, and there was a sort of a reorg on the Microsoft side as well. So
Mm,
we actually were part of the Azure team before.
mm,
Now we are our own. There's a whole Microsoft security division on its like a standalone service division in Microsoft, and it's we sort of work a lot more closely with all of the other different services in the suite, and you'll see things like Copilot, which sort of brings
mm.
everything together from all of the different services, the Microsoft Security Copilot. There are
Yeah.
lots of Copilots, and
Yes.
I'm talking about the Security Copilot, which is bringing. So you don't really need to think about whether you're going to Entra ID or you're going to Sentinel or you're going to Defender. You just want the Copilot. You want to ask a question and have that
Mm.
answered about all of what's happening in your tenant from a security perspective. So that like those are some of those fruits of having all those teams sit together and work together for customers.
Absolutely. And on Copilot, as we record this, January 16th, yesterday it was announced that Copilot is widening out and becoming more available to customers, which is great news. You can now get one license for SMB, and I'll put links to that in this, and I'll probably do a little separate video on it too. But do you see the Copilot story sort of coming into the Entra side of things as well, as it tied with Security Copilot, or do you think we'll get our own Identity Copilot? What's your, without giving away anything that you know that you might not be able to share, of course?
Yes, so we did announce a few things at Ignite, and
Mm,
it was mostly around the Security Copilot is
yeah.
where you would have there will be Copilot sort of in a lot of the places, but
Mm,
the Security Copilot will be the place where you would get all of it coming in together, so you just have one
mm.
place to go to.
Amazing. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to have a little sneak peek at Security Copilot, and I like what I see so far. I think it's got a ways to. This time next year, I imagine we'll be having much more exciting conversations about it. When you see how far M365 Copilot has come in the last year, so I'm really excited for what it can do. I must admit, I'm probably quite well known in the community for being not AI averse, but a little AI cautious. I like to ask the ethical and uh, questions and that sort of thing to make sure it's responsible and ethical and safe. So, but I like what I see so far, having played with it and had the opportunity to see where it can add value. And I'm very excited to see where the story goes. I really am. So as we get into this year with Ignite, will be coming up again in the spring. I would imagine there'll be more to come.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, and it's an evolving story. There are lots happening, and we are learning as well as customers try it out and give us feedback. And
Mm,
that's always been the case with Microsoft. We like my role itself. I'm a customer success, customer acceleration team is the name of the new team that I'm working with, and
yeah.
my role when they first talked to me and like I was interviewed for the role, I was like, how why does this even sort of exist, right? Like initially it was about Azure AD is just a directory service. Like, why is there even a role for this? But Microsoft puts a lot of value in customers and hearing feedback from our customers and making sure it goes back into the product. And
Mm,
that's sort of where I see Microsoft sets Microsoft in, and especially in identity, a little apart from a lot of the others. It's this having this focus of customers driven feedback and
mm,
listening to customers and implementing what they really want, and even showing it to customers and getting
mm,
their feedback early. So that's something that we really value as Microsoft. There are things that they invest and build in, and sort of the leadership team decides what they're going to do.
mm,
But then as we build the product, we work a lot on feedback. A lot of the times my role is to, even before the product is we have written even a single line of code, even before maybe we even write the specs, We have the feature like the PMs have set up meetings with customers,
Hmm.
hear their feedback, what their pain points are, and then we try to make sure what we build is what our customers are asking us for.
Yeah.
And so we work a lot with, my role is enterprise, but there are I have counterparts who work with all the different sort of different slices of Microsoft market. So we have the
Hmm.
enterprise, we have the small to medium businesses, and there's the consumer side of things. So there are different folks from mine who give this feedback straight into engineering. So I'm actually part of the engineering org,
Hmm.
as opposed to maybe part of the local subsidiary in Australia, where it's sort of a different role you would play.
Yeah.
Um, so that's where it's sort of I was like amazed that such a team even existed, where it was such customer focused, even though it was part of engineering.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's I can see the now, like, see the real value in having this sort of team as part
Hmm.
of the engineering division itself.
Yeah, and that customer and community interaction. And when I talk about community, the opportunities that we as Microsoft MVPs get and regional directors get, I think that's so crucial in getting that feedback from lots of different areas. And Microsoft are really good at that. From my experience over the past few years, I've had lots of opportunities to give feedback, and I probably don't do it enough these days because I have a really busy day job, and what time I don't have,
Exactly.
I'm
Yes.
doing stuff like this, the videos. So I'm not on product feedback groups as often as I'd like to be these days. But there's so many opportunities to give that feedback, and I know sometimes people will say that things take a bit of time, but when you see the work that goes into it from Microsoft and the community and customers on early access programs, it's understandable when you think about it. Because I get a lot of people saying to me, "Well, this, that, or the other was announced at Ignite, and then nothing happened, and then it's Inspire, and then they talk a bit more about it, and nothing happens for a lot longer. People just want stuff really quickly." But
Yeah.
when you see the amount of effort that goes into it and the back and forth, it makes sense. And there's so much love and work and dedication goes into it, isn't there?
Absolutely. There's so much, like when I came in and worked with the org, like because we are building a global scale at global
Mm.
scale, right? Like what's deployed is used by millions of users, and they're
Mm.
hitting this login page every time. But it's doing so many things, right? You define a conditional access policy. There's so much that happens. But the teams that build it, are you like, you'll be blown away. I come from in my from the enterprise side of things. I know how
Mm.
many people we had when we were building something small, and here I come and see this app or the service that has millions of users, and maybe for a specific feature you have like a very small team, like 4 or 5 people. That's it, who are building it. That's there, but then you have big army of folks who sort of maintain, and from the operations side of things, make sure
Mm.
everything is architected and designed and built the right way and runs at that global scale, which is sort of a fine balance. When it was
Mm.
on prem, you could just throw more and more servers at your AD, and you would manage things. But then at the global scale, we need to make sure everything is performant, but also we evolve and add new features and protect the director. So it's not an easy thing running something like this at this global scale.
Mm.
And our promise has been, when I joined in 2020, it went to 99.99, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, so that sort of the resiliency and things, that it's not easy going even like a .9 out.
Yeah.
That means there's a lot of work behind the scenes to get to that.
Oh, wonderful! I love to hear that team effort, and it's never going to be a finished story, is it? Because it's always going to continuously evolve. Because as we know, there are some nasty people out there who want to break through defenses, and it starts with identity. They've got to get past that identity first, haven't they, to get to where they want, which is ultimately the data. So identity is
Yes.
massively important and will continue to be so, and it will always have to continuously evolve, no doubt about that. What I'd love to get your thoughts on is, as we get into 2024, we're already way through January. What do you think is going to land the most? What are you most excited about within Entra that you think we'll see customers adopting? I know that my good friend Andy Malone, who has a wonderful YouTube channel, he interviewed Jeremy Chapman recently of Microsoft Mechanics,
Yeah.
and they talked a little bit about global secure access and the the private access as well. Is that something, an example of where you see this is going to hit big in 2024?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, like one of our biggest things right now, it's in public preview, and you see new features. And it's been fascinating for me to see how an idea goes from sort of just an idea to being implemented, and us building it
Mm,
out at the global scale as well, and deploying it. And it's our philosophy is always to do something unique, not just to sort of replicate features. And
yeah.
what we do there with conditional access, with identity, and tying all of these things in with the network together, that's a very unique, sort of very compelling story there. And
Mm,
you can do sort of amazing things which normally would take like months of a project to implement lots of different pieces and tying them together. You can now define like a universal conditional access. You don't need to
mm,
add apps into Entra ID. You can just define a universal conditional access and say, this on-prem app, I want it to have MFA, I want it to be a FIDO2, like a strong auth to access this on-prem app. The app doesn't even need to know about uh, any of the modern auth, doesn't need to implement it, but the universal conditional access will kick in and make you do a FIDO2 or maybe even passkeys
mm,
when they land. So that's sort of very sort of a fascinating way of putting all these things together with a like a
mm,
new take on things, which is not just about network, but it's like all of those different factors coming in together. um, I just looking at today, in Australia we have this thing called the ACSC maturity levels for MFA, which you
mm.
do have. The US, it's the NIST standards are there. They're
Yeah.
called the AAL 1, 2, and 3. In Australia, they've seen a lot of the risk and the compromise. So the ASD, which is sort of like the NSA, and I think in the UK also you have a body like that. So they've defined these maturity levels for MFA, and
Hmm.
what they just came out, they made a change where at maturity level 2 you have to use a phishing resistant authentication. So
Right.
you have maturity level 1, you need to use some form of auth, MFA, it can be anything.
Mm,
At maturity level 2 it has to be phishing resistant, and maturity level 3 like continues with that, but it's more enforced for even on-prem systems. So
mm,
there's a lot of focus on doing those things, and our services like global secure access will allow customers to get to that really, in a faster, quicker manner. They can implement this as opposed to going to every single app in the org and trying to get it
mm.
updated to modern authentication and doing things like that. And that's going to be a game changer. Like I see, um, it won't have all the bells and whistles when we launch, but it's going to have all these unique things, if you're a Microsoft customer, that you can make use of. And the
Oh,
other biggest thing is, they built it from day one with side by side. So they knew customers will find it hard to commit to just
mm,
one. So even if you're using any other net VPN, cloud VPN service, you can use Microsoft service together with it. And it runs side by side. So it was built to work that way. And that's sort of very unique. You don't need to like move off completely from where you are. You can just start using this. So that's
oh,
going to be a way I feel lots of customers will start being able to use this. I think I feel it'll be one of the fastest adopted new service from Microsoft by customers.
oh, wonderful. I totally agree. I think the value is definitely there. I'm excited to see where it goes, without a doubt, and I'll be continuing to watch the story, and see how it develops. But I noted about 4 minutes ago, I couldn't believe we went about 20 minutes of our conversation before we mentioned conditional access, which is absolutely, for me, the hero product of Entra. It's wow, what a journey that's been on. And you mentioned authentication strengths, which for me is wonderful addition to the suite of products. We couldn't live without conditional access. I mean, it's I always say to people, if you do one thing, do MFA.
Yeah.
And MFA is the most basic form of conditional access, right? So where would we be
Yes.
without it? Or what a journey it's been on.
Yeah, it's like when I started, it was so small and simple, and you would have just MFA and things in there. But now it's been expanding and growing, and
Mm,
it's sort of central to almost everything in
mm,
Entra in identity. And I myself started my small mini YouTube channel, and I felt that's a topic that wasn't covered well enough. So I actually started a
mm,
series where I'm going through all of the different parts of conditional access. Like most of the times I want to like create a policy and know what it will look like from the user
mm.
side of things, and I didn't find a lot of content in that where I wanted it for myself to say, okay,
Yeah.
if I turn this on, what's the user experience going to be? And so I've
Mm.
sort of started documenting that and sharing that, like turning each feature on and then seeing what happens from user experience, because it does take time to set up and test
Mm.
each of the different things, and then all the combinations, that's going to be a different thing on its own altogether.
Oh, what a wonderful idea! As YouTubers, as a fellow YouTuber, I always it's easy to think from the admin's perspective and not think of the user sometimes. But that's the most important part, isn't it? So, what a great idea! If you would share the link to your YouTube channel, we'll get that out there for people to go and take a look at your content, because I
That'll be
love
good.
that. What a great idea! Fantastic stuff. But well, I've kept you talking for almost 30 minutes, and it's evening your time. It's the start of my day. It's the end of your day, so I'll let you go in a moment. But before I do, I'd just like to wind up with, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about um, what you enjoy doing in your spare time. Who is Merill Fernando? Not the Microsoft person, but the actual person in home life and hobbies and interests. Because you're such a well-known and respected and loved figure on socials. We all familiar with your work, but what do you like to do in your spare time?
So in my spare time, I like going on hikes, and
Hmm.
so in Melbourne, in Australia, where I am, it's there's a lot that we can go around and see with hiking, and the weather is good most of the year. So I spend my a lot of my time walking, going out. I have a few colleagues or friends of mine, and every weekend we sort of all the guys get together. We go Sunday morning before the sun comes out. We all get together and we just head out somewhere and spend a few hours walking around, exploring, discovering things. So that's my favorite thing. As someone who's sat in a desk all throughout his life, I've had lots of issues with my sort of herniated disc and things like that,
Hmm.
which makes it really hard to do. But the walking has certainly helped a lot. I just stumbled into it a few years ago, and it sort of changed me completely.
Oh, wonderful.
I sort of the whole back pain and stuff went away. Like during there was a period where for about 6 months I couldn't stand. I had to be lying
Oh,
on my
wow.
stomach because of the pain whenever the nerves were touching. So this has changed me completely. So I love hikes. I used to do 5K, and even now I do like maybe once a week or twice a week. But that sort of makes it worse. And walking is sort of like the best thing that's that's
Oh,
helped me like get out of the house, leave everything. I just turn
yeah.
everything off and just go off, which is good. Like it lets your mind think, and I
Mm.
find for me that's my most creative time. I just sort of get energized. I have
Mm.
new ideas coming in on what to do, and things that I can build and share with the community. So that's something I really like doing.
Oh, what a wonderful, positive message. So good for your physical and mental health and well being. I love it. So nice to hear that you've managed to get that into your life and it's helped with your back pain, because back pain ain't nice at all. I could testify to that. So amazing. Well, Merill, thank you so much for being so generous with your time, your own time on your evening. I do appreciate it massively. You're welcome
No,
anytime
it's
on the
not bad.
channel to come and speak with me and our audience. We always want to hear about exciting things with Entra. We'll put all the details to your socials, your YouTube channel, the link to the newsletter, so folks can check it out. And thank you so much again, my friend. It's an absolute pleasure.
Awesome, Peter. Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed my time. I've been following you for a long time. I always watch all the videos that you drop. And you were one of the people who sort of motivated me to, hey, start my own sort of journey on YouTube and start sharing. So I really looked up to you and your channel and what you are sharing. So looking forward to seeing a lot more success coming your way.
Oh, thank you so much, my friend. That's so kind of you to say. I really appreciate it. So that's it, folks. Merill Fernando, a wonderful guest. We'll see Merill again very soon, I'm sure, out there in the community and back on the channel. We'll wind up this video now. And as ever, please remember to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, join if you want to become a member and support the channel. But we'll see you on another episode very, very soon. And wish you a pleasant day wherever you are in the world. Take care. Bye-bye.